let's look at the nib to XHeight grids. So the nib to XHeight grids is another aspect of testing your nibs. Normally what I would do is I would rule just one line, actually a series of individual lines with a large gap between them, like 25 millimeters. And then I would try to write at different sizes. This nib XHeight grid that I produced is different in that it has increments of 2 millimeters, so you don't have to rule the lines up. And you then don't have to go and check what the XHeights are because basically they're there. I tend to work in increments of 2 millimeters. You might decide on some of the nibs that you want to work with them at 1 millimeter just to see what they work like. And of course, some of them actually work smaller than that. You can write with some nibs, pointed flexible metal nibs as well. That's really my focus for this. You can use this for broad edge nibs as well. I will come to that later. You can write with some pointed flexible metal nibs at 0.5 millimeter in height. And that's really sort of testing the sharpness of the nib and the fineness of its hairline to shade characteristics. Now what I've done with these is I've made 2 sets of them. Now they come in A4 and US letter size. Choose the size you want. You'll find that they come in also a direct writing and an indirect writing. And that means with the direct writing, the grids are at 40%. So you print them off and you write directly onto them. This is slightly problematic, especially if you're testing ink, because you do need to print them onto paper that you know your ink, the fluid that you're writing with, will not interact with the printer ink and bleed across these lines, because if it's bleeding, then it's not going to give you an accurate result. The indirect writing is at an opacity of 100%. And at 100% opacity, that really allows you to put it underneath a sheet of paper. And this is where you can really test it, because if you're using something like layout paper or marker pad paper, you can really see those lines under there, and you are writing directly onto paper that you know, or you should know, that that particular ink will work on. The most important thing about doing this nib to XHeight testing is knowing about the inks and the papers that work together, because if you're trying to write on papers that will not work with those nibs and those inks, then you're not going to get an accurate reading of how the nib works in relation to that particular XHeight. So be a little bit conscious about that. Let's look at these. So these are the grids. This is the direct grid, which is at 40%. And what you'll see is each line has a little ladder, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I also sometimes write it at the top here so that I know which size I'm working at. I tend to use this for the minuscules and this for the majuscules. You can choose any letter. I generally choose the letter B because there's a line of universal beauty and there are curves to have to deal with as well. And I write an A here. Now, these also come, so this has a 55-degree angle line on it. You could just about see it. You could just about see it there. It's very, very faint. And then they come without a 55. And then they come without any of those lines. So the reason for this is so that you can test it at, with pointed nibs as well as with broad edge nibs. Now the indirect one, this is at 100%, which is crazy to see because it makes you think you're going blind. But as soon as you slip that underneath a sheet of layout paper, you can see it knocks it back quite a lot. Now, you do have to be a little bit more a little bit careful when you're looking at it, because you really want to try and get those lines a little bit more accurately when you're writing on them, because the aim here is to help you understand a little bit about how your nibs work at different sizes so that you can make notes on them.